And now in other topics, in the context of the diplomatic tensions between Colombia and the United States, we have a special guest today, Yonatan Mosquera, member of the October 12 Platform Collective in the United Kingdom. Hello, Yonatan. Welcome to From the South.
Hi, how are you? Thank you.
Well, President Gustavo Petro has reacted to the actions of the United States in the Caribbean and also its attempts to destabilize Venezuela. For this reason, the U.S. government has increased its hostilities towards Colombia. How would you evaluate Gustavo Petro's leadership in this context?
I think that that is Petro explained it with the foreign axis. There is a movement now worldwide in which imperialism is pushing everywhere because they're getting more desperate. So Petro explained that it is not coincidence, and he explained in different speeches that it's not coincidence that what they're experimenting in Gaza, he did say the bombs were coming our way. And he explained also that this war will be an experiment. What Petro was trying to explain today, in my opinion, is that we have to get rid of so many myths. The war on drugs. He explained very clearly how the rich is a war on the poor, how the real the drug dealers are in Miami and everything. They don't get targeted. But he also explained the real purpose when he say that the so-called aid was withdrawn when Colombia was really more effective against the drugs. So it was never about drugs. That's the most important thing about drugs. And I think Petro very good at explaining is that it's got nothing to do with drugs. It's got to do with domination, because the moment there was a disobedience for the Colombian president, they withdraw the so-called aid. They also withdrawn the weapons that were looking after the president. And then Petro explained, well, we're going to have to sort out our own defense. Petro is sending a message, in my opinion, that it's time in history now that Latin America and the press nations of the world get rid of all this shackle of imperialism, because they are getting more aggressive, and it's time to defend ourselves.
Also, the presence of U.S. warships in the Caribbean has resulted as well in dozens of deaths. You were mentioning these circumstances, also including Colombians among the deaths, without any evidence that they are actually linked to drug trafficking. In the face of this threat, how can Colombia defend its internal interests without yielding to the pressures from the White House?
Yes, there is only one way to do this. We have to defend our national sovereignty. We won that right when we defeated the Spanish crown more than 200 years ago. Petro continues talking about the sword of Bolivar. But before talking about evidence, I don't think the point is even if there are drug dealers or not. That isn't the point. The point is the violation of our sovereignty and the normalization that imperialism now is claiming for itself the right to call Maduro a drug dealer, to invoke the Noriega threat, because they've done it before to Panama. To them, they use the Nobel Peace Prize to elevate Maria Corina and create artificially, an opposition figure, etc. Is all this part of the war moves? So really, whether they were drug dealers or no is not the point. And the Colombian people have to respond by being united and calling this by what it is. Is also linked to the sanctions against Venezuela and Cuba, the brutal blockade on Cuba. The Israeli prerogative to attack their allies like Qatar, their enemies like Yemen. They kidnapping people on the sea, Colombian citizens. It's all about the imperial prerogative. Regime change in Venezuela, controlling Colombia, etc.
Also, Gustavo Petro has condemned U.S. threats against Venezuela. From the perspective of regional support, how does this position is benefiting Venezuela, and how it can also influence the alliance dynamics within Latin America in this context of potential threat for the region?
Petro has been defending Venezuela from the point of view of?
From the point of view, I was mentioning that Gustavo Petro has been defending Venezuela's integrity and self-determination in the context of a potential action, military action against the country. How would you describe the support that has been given by Colombia from a regional perspective?
I think Petro is doing the right thing. And I think that actually is most of the leaders are doing more or less the right thing. There is obviously a big exception, Argentina, Milei, which is a puppet and is a stooge of imperialism. But I think that in general, there needs to be the situation needs to be more understood more urgently. Like, for example, Petro explained that we need to get on our own weapons, but I think that the question about the soldiers, I think we need to give a different answer. These American soldiers are a threat to us. They are there to threaten Venezuela. That's the only reason the American soldiers are in Colombia is to threaten Venezuela. Maybe one day they want to threaten Ecuador or Panama or a government that they don't like inside Colombia. There is no a possibility in which the Colombian people could benefit from any single American soldier on their soil.
Yonatan, one last question. What do you think should be the next step for Latin America to handle this situation, both in terms of diplomacy and also security?
I think in diplomacy they're doing what they can, and they're trying to organize different alliances. Petro talked about alliances with China, with Europe, etc. So I think diplomatically they're doing what they can. And I'm more concerned about the people. This affects the people. Petro explained as well that the poor people are the first one to be affected. And I think that to achieve peace, the poor, we don't want war. We're always the losers, but the oppressed, we need to make it clear to the oppressors that we're ready to defend ourselves so that they think twice before their war crimes. And that means we need to mobilize support on the streets. There is an opportunity here in London. Next Tuesday, outside the American Embassy, the community of Latin Americans are calling for a demonstration in defense of Venezuela, in defense of Colombia, and in defense of Latin America. It's called Hands Off Latin America. Next Tuesday, outside the American Embassy at 6 p.m. Bring your flags, bring whatever, but we need to defend, they need to understand that we're ready to defend ourselves, and that is the best way to avoid a war, to send a message that we are ready to defend ourselves.